What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another Wild Rift video. I'm Kangas, and today I'm going over our champion tier list for patch 2.1. This tier list is a generalized one for the Wild Rift, covering all levels of play, because there's still not a lot of information and data available for the Wild Rift. We're holding off on making tier lists specific to different levels of play for now, but this one should still be pretty accurate for your gameplay experience. With that said, let's get straight into it.
Gragas has always been a fundamentally strong champion due to his powerful sustain and insane teamfighting utility. And on this patch, he's slowly shaped up to be one of the strongest Baron laners. He did receive some small nerfs on 2.0a since he was virtually impossible to bully out of lane, but as players have become more familiar with the champion, he's still at the top. Champions like Olaf and Darius have been running the Baron lane for the last few patches, and Gragas has an excellent time at dealing with these kinds of beefy bruisers. His barrel roll is great for collecting minions and whittling them down from range. And if they do find a favorable trade on you, Happy Hour will heal you up over the course of the lane. Body Slam and Explosive Cask give Gragas considerable burst and AoE crowd control, and are great for setting up ganks. Gragas really shines in mid-game teamfights, where he can lay down his Explosive Cask and chunk out and divide the entire enemy team. When Gragas has a lead, his burst damage is incredible, and he'll often just delete carries in an instant. But if he's even or behind, his ability to peel enemy divers and threaten enemy carries with Explosive Cask is still phenomenal, and allows him to have great impact over every game. Gragas is also overall hilarious, and quite OP, so if you haven't tried him out, you absolutely should. Fiora has always required a high level of finesse and control over your champion. She's been under the radar so far, but we've kept an eye on her performance, and she's slowly climbed up to the S rank for this patch. Players are becoming much more comfortable with piloting her on the Wild Rift, and she's pretty powerful when you master her. If Fiora is hitting her vitals as soon as they spawn, she's practically the best champion in the game. This is extremely hard to do consistently, but it's what separates the good Fiora players from the greats. Once you start to learn the pattern and how to position yourself around it, everything you do becomes that much more impactful. Fiora's Riposte is one of the most annoying abilities in the game, and can be used to ruin almost any champion's ability to fight back against you. Riposte can be used to block crucial CC or even high damage abilities, and help her duel anyone she comes up against. If Fiora had a smoother build path, she'd be quite OP, but for now, she remains in the S tier as a very powerful Baron laner. Akali has slowly fallen from grace, and while she's still relatively powerful and can certainly take over games with her Hextech Gunblade power spike, she's not capable of laning well into many of the OP champions and can't really find a foothold into most games. Gragas, Olaf, Darius, and Fiora all have tools to either disengage her all in or simply beat her in it, making it super hard for her to really get anything done. Kennen and Malphite are also very popular, and they'll just poke her out while not being vulnerable to her at all. Once Akali gets her items and can teamfight, she's still excellent at finding carries and deleting them from the rift. But she gets bullied in the side lanes and struggles to get any meaningful gold since she loses the early game so hard. If you're a skilled Akali player and can navigate difficult laning phases, you will still find success. But with her current power level, you're better off putting time into other champions. So here's our champion tier list for the Baron lane. Before we continue though, make sure to join our Wild Rift Discord in the description below, and make sure to sub to the channel to keep up to date with all things related to Wild Rift. It really helps us out with the channel growing, and we love you all for it. Evelyn's brief stint in the mid lane demonstrated just how powerful she can be at taking over games and making it impossible to play for so many champions. As a jungler, she's doing all that, but without the actual counterplay of being able to beat her in lane. Evelyn has insane burst and plows through her camps at incredible speed, allowing her to get to her level 5 power spike really quickly. Once she has her ultimate unlocked, she gains stealth, which makes it extremely tricky to track her, and her gank threat on every lane is unmatched. There's still no control wards on the Wild Rift, so every player has to respect her like she's about to gank them. She also scales extremely well, so even if she's not killing people every time her ultimate is available, every bit of gold she gets, she will put to good use. Her burst combo is hard to outplay and often can feel just undodgeable, especially when you can't see her coming. She's extremely frustrating for every player on the Rift to deal with, but especially for Baron laners, who have to play in an extended lane while not having the safety net of a support to help them out. Overall, she's just great at controlling games and can easily carry with any leads that her stealth nets her. Graves has been pretty overlooked since the beginning of the Wild Rift, but he's slowly becoming better as players learn to abuse his strengths as a jungler. He's found his new home in the S tier for this patch, and if you've seen him in any of your games, it's likely he's probably been carrying. Graves has one main weakness, and that's that he lacks any hard CC. He does have one of the most powerful abilities in the game though in his smoke screen, which reduces your vision radius when you're inside of it. This ability can make it really difficult for any carry to play out a teamfight, and if your team is smart, they'll throw skill shots at the smoke screen's target since they can't really dodge them. Graves is quite flexible as a carry, and you can build him in many different ways to deal with different situations. You can build Black Cleaver and Phantom Dancer if you need to DPS frontline, you can sack Lifesteal if the enemy team is full of assassins and divers, and you can even build full lethality if you want to assassinate squishies. His ability to carry games is quite strong, and his powerful farming and dueling allow him to get there really quickly. He's somewhat poor at setting up ganks, but having ranged auto attacks with red buff and smokescreen slows means that you still have to respect him. And the last jungler we're talking about is Olaf. He's become extremely popular in the Baron lane, and now that his strengths are on full display, he's also proven to be just as powerful of a jungler too. He absolutely destroys the jungle, and will often create CS leads in the jungle through sheer speed of clearing. His chase down potential is also unmatched, with Undertow's slows chaining into itself, and his dueling is excellent against almost all champions. The only weakness he has is that jungle income tends to dry up in the mid game, which means that he'll often get outscaled if he can't close out a game. However, he is great at killing objectives, and most fights he takes will be a win, so he can often create a substantial enough lead that the outscale factor doesn't really matter. So here's our champion tier list for the jungle. Before we get into the rest of the video, our question of the day is, which new champion have you found the most fun? Personally, I like making people cry, so I think Teemo is hilarious. The pain you inflict the other Baron laner is just so satisfying. Make sure to leave your answer though in the comments down below. Corki is one of the freshest faces on the Wild Rift right now, and if you haven't already picked him up, you should. The Darien Bombardier dishes out damage like crazy the entire game, and can easily carry against any foe. Corki also has individual playmaking potential, with the package giving him access to Empowered Valkyrie, which can tear teams apart and will often even do tons of damage. It's hard to shut down Corki in lane, as Phosphorus Bomb and Missile Barrage are great for collecting minions. Oftentimes, Corki can also use these to harass, poking down the enemy mid laner from a range where they can't even retaliate. He's also quite hard to gank, with his Valkyrie providing him a fairly long escape. He's obnoxious to lane against, and while he spikes incredibly hard in Trinity Force, he can make plays all game long with the package. He's great at killing tanks and carries alike, and you should definitely add him to your pool if you haven't already. As it seems to be with any meta that has Corki in it, Orianna is sure to follow. The Eternal Queen of mid lane, Orianna has great utility, damage, and one of the most satisfying ultimates in the game. Her laning phase is great, and while she won't contribute the most to early skirmishes, her Clockwork Windup and Command Attack make it so that she can take favorable trades all game long and bully most mid laners out. She's also great at farming from range and scaling up in losing matchups, and will often out-teamfight any champion that can beat her in lane. Her ultimate combines excellent with diving champions for a wombo combo, and a 5-man shockwave can often bring back a game that was on the brink of defeat. And our last mid laner we're going over today is Aurelion Sol. He's not top tier, but a solid A-rank champ. His lack of scaling was previously cited as too impactful to make his powerful shove and roaming in the early game relevant enough. However, as players have become more familiar with his strange playstyle, A-Sol has been shown to be quite strong at taking over games. His teamfighting isn't too bad either, and a skilled Aurelion Sol player can often maneuver around abilities while dishing out considerable damage. He's worth playing if you think he looks fun or even just enjoy his aesthetic. But if you want the best chances of winning, you should stick to the higher tiers. So here's our champion tier list for the mid lane. Kai'Sa is showing an extreme level of dominance on patch 2.1, but it's not all necessarily during the laning phase. Her trades with the Cathian Rain can be quite powerful, but they're most deadly when you can land Voidseeker as well for the insane burst and passive stacks. Kai'Sa really shines once she gets her Cathian Rain evolved, which doubles the damage and turns it into a single target nuke. If any carry is isolated, she can fly in and deal insane damage, oftentimes annihilating them in a second or two. Kai'Sa has great tools for dealing with almost every composition in the game. The only thing she struggles with is melting through tanks, but her access to enemy backline with Killer Instinct often means that she can just ignore them and simply dive the carries. Once Supercharge is evolved, the invisibility is great for avoiding enemy threats, and helps you reposition to safety so that you can keep putting out damage. She's great at every stage of the game, and while she doesn't have the raw power during lane phase that some of the other marksmen have, her versatility and range of tools put her a step ahead. We talked about Misfortune in our last tier list, and the reasons we listed there are all still applicable on the current patch. We won't go over everything again, but we're going to talk about the main reasons why she's so strong. Primarily, her love tap and double up are great trading tools in the early game, and most marksmen don't have strong answers to Misfortune's insane short trading power. Her ultimate bullet time also helps her DPS from a very safe range and can often wipe entire teams if positioned well. She has great tools for dealing damage, she simply lacks power against tanks, and sometimes can be easily handled by assassins. If played around, she will dominate the game from start to finish and is still extremely OP. Corki has also found a home in the bottom lane as a pretty mediocre AD carry. While he's quite powerful in the mid lane, his poke is far less relevant since supports can often hard engage and force all-ins or just mitigate it with their shields and heals. The XP is also split between 2 players, so he reaches his level 6 spike much later, and the stats gained from having solo experience are quite valuable for Corki. He's not a great bot laner, but if you just love the champion, he's definitely playable. And here's the rest of our champion tier list for AD carry. Lulu has settled into the Wild Rift, and she's been proven to be extremely powerful as a support. Her utility from Wild Growth and Whimsy is quite powerful, and Help Picks is one of the best shields in the entire game, since it also gives the shielded target picks, which increases the DPS substantially. She's hard to punish in lane and can often play quite safely and scale to her potent mid game, where she will out-contribute most other supports. Killing carries when Lulu is near is borderline impossible, and since Lulu can cast all of her utility on herself as well, it's hard to pick her off too. She's great at all stages of the game and props up her teammates very nicely. Pick her if you can, she's super OP. Oh hey look, it's me. Braum has been strong for a while, but he's really settled nicely into the S tier due to how well he matches up into Alistar in particular. Alistar loves to engage constantly, and while Braum usually can't stop the initial headbutt pulverize, he can jump in front and deploy Unbreakable, stopping the crucial follow-up. Braum and his team can then stun any incoming foes with concussive blows, and Glacial Fissure can be cast if needed to stop any additional follow-up from the enemy team. His laning phase against Alistar is just great, because he plays so well into the fighting style of Alistar, making it really hard for that champ to contribute to the game. And last up, we'll talk about Malphite, a somewhat unconventional support pick, but a favorite of players in gold and below. His poke from Seismic Shard can be a little hard to deal with in the early game, and Ground Slam is a potent attack speed slow that will remove a large portion of the enemy marksman's DPS. Unstoppable Force is one of the best ultimates in the game, and when Malphite unlocks it, the enemy bot lane has to consider his all-in threat for the rest of the game. Malphite isn't a top tier pick, but if the enemy team has lots of AD or just heaps of immobile carries, he's definitely worth being considered, especially if you're in gold or below. So here's our champion tier list for supports.
And that wraps up our updated tier list for patch 2.1. Again, this tier list is meant to encompass all levels of play, so you might find that it's not perfect for your elo, but it should give you a general indicator of what's good and what you should be looking to play if you want those wins. Once more data is available on champion strength and success, our tier list will become even more accurate, so make sure to stay tuned for our future updates. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Don't forget to answer our question of the day in the comments down below, and as always, best of luck on the Rift. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one. Huh! No, the laugh. I thrusted.